I love it when things work as advertised. Like sequels, for example. Too many times I've seen people attempt a sequel to something and it falls flat on its face, right? Nobody attempts a sequel and goes, I'm going to make this significantly worser than the first one. Worser is not a real word, so I should have just said worse. Whatever. No one makes a sequel to something, whether it be a movie, whether it be a video game, whether it be anything, a product, a toy line, whatever. No one makes a sequel to something and goes, I'm going to make this much worse than the first one. And that happens a lot, honestly. But in my opinion, well, at least in my experience, and also my opinion, sequels tend to be better. Generally, all across the board, in my almost 40 years on this earth, I've sequels or second iterations to things typically are better. Where am I going with this shit? Remnant 2, right? Uh, Great. I would give this game scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. So far, I'm a little less than halfway in the game. I'm playing with two other friends, so it's a trio just about almost every night. And we're having a fucking blast and a heart attack at the same time because it is a Dark Souls like game, which of course Dark Souls games nowadays are bittersweet. Personally, I feel like there's just way too many of them. And on one end, you can look at it as like we're spoiled for choice, which is great because you would always have something to play if you're looking for those type of games. You're looking for that specific type of genre. Like you've got a plethora of games to choose from, but at the same time, you've got the fatigue aspect to it, right? I hate to use the word fatigue because it sounds a little dramatic, right? Like fatigue, like you're physically and literally getting tired of something, but it is kind of like that, right? There is some sort of fatigue. Like you do get tired of that shit. Like I'm tired of going like this game looks cool and all, and then you watch like a trailer and you're like, all right, it's another fucking Dark Souls clone, which is not a bad thing, but it's just like it would be cool to either reinvent the formula to something new and fresh, kind of take the same aspects and evolve them. But it just so happens that the Dark Souls formula is so good that whoever tries to imitate it, they typically just don't really do much in terms of reinvigorating or reinventing or updating mechanics. They kind of just go, hey, look, Dark Souls shit works great, the visuals work great, the controls work great, the mechanics work great, let's just completely copy all of that and not innovate any way whatsoever. Some games do. Some games add a little extra pizzazz or whatever you want to call it, and it works great. And it's good to see that. But all in all, you would say 75% of the core game is a Dark Souls game, a From Software game. So these guys are just trendsetters all around, and rightfully so because the Dark Souls series is the shit. I played one like 75% of one. Never finished it, but I have played Dark Souls type games that weren't exactly made by From Software, but like Sekiro and Neo. I want to say one is Team Ninja. I think that's the developers, possibly the publishers. I don't know. Either way you put it, but they're both all in the same vein. And I can't. I I would say if you played one, you've played them all, but that wouldn't be fair. That's too thick of generalizing. I'm generalizing that too thickly. They all differ in their own stylistic ways, and their mechanics don't stray too far away, but they're all there. You play one, you kind of go like, all right, I have a very good idea of what the other ones would be like. This one, speaking right of innovations, right? This one takes Dark Souls and adds guns. You know what I mean? Like, is it Dark Souls? Yeah. Is it Dark Souls with guns? Yeah. And it works. It fucking works, just like the first Remnant did from the ashes. Remnant 2 picks up as a sequel and just makes everything better. It's still a Dark Souls type game, but it's still a very much entertaining and fresh game to play. It's better. It feels like it's bigger. It feels like the mechanics are more finely tuned. And I read an article the other day. Not in. I just read the headline of the article. I didn't read the fucking article. Okay, you got me. And one of them said Remnant 2 has the best boss mechanics he's ever played in a game. And I started to think like yesterday because we finished beating this one boss. We were up to like 3 in the morning, man. We started like at 12 something, at like 12:30, 12:40, and we game late, and we ended up all going to bed at like 3. Just and a good hour, hour and a half was just dedicated to this one fucking boss that we can. And I wish I could say that was the first time that happened, but several times throughout the nights we have been stuck at a boss or some sort of a boss type level. Those fucking cubes, dude. When you're in the labyrinth and these cubes, you got to shoot these white lights in the middle of the cube, and they create like this concave, like this hole in the cube, and then you have to go under the cube because it's this giant cube trying to crush whatever, dude. What I'm telling you is that fuck those cubes. That's what I'm saying. Whatever. We stood fucking hours playing that. It was annoying, but we did it. She did it. One of my friends, who I'm not even gonna lie to you, I least expected to pull through, actually pull through, because she's great with puzzles. Not I'm more of like the tank in the group, the fucking boneheaded, just full on slot. You want you want combat, leave that to me. And she's more of the brain. She does the puzzles. She solved two puzzles already that me and another friend were like, dude, I'm just gonna run around and shoot the wall while she does that. So the guy who wrote the article said that Remnant 2 has some of the best boss mechanics he's ever played, or I think his actual words were it has the best boss mechanics that he's ever played, and also slash just bosses in general. And I had that in mind as I was playing the game, and I was like, fuck, this guy might be right. I can't say that these are the best bosses I've ever seen in a game, but they're fucking close. Maybe as more time goes on, they're super memorable. These bosses and the mechanics are fun. There's a lot of memorization, and you know, like I was gonna say earlier, I had this whole little opening about how people generally don't innovate on the Dark Souls formula, but Remnant has done that, not at a grand scale, but definitely at a noticeable one. And the bosses are one. They're fun and they're hard and they're like they do get your blood pumping because you always get so close to defeating one. You just keep losing until you get good, and that's the formula, right? That's literally the backbone of a what makes a Dark Souls game so goddamn addictive. It's the backbone, the lifeblood, the crux. Is that the word I'm looking for? I don't even know what that means. CRUX, whatever. The lifeblood of a Dark Souls game is the difficulty. It's the fact that you get so close to defeating that boss every single time you play. That you know that if you just do it a few more times, eventually you'll win. And then that feeling of of exhilaration and of anxiety in your palm. One of my friends keeps saying, she's like, dude, I have to wipe my hands. Like, because her hands get so sweaty when she's playing, because she's like having an anxiety attack when I play. I had one yesterday too because we died. We right before I said one last time because everybody was already tired from getting our asses kicked and just tired from gaming so late. And I hit him with the one more time, which was a straight up lie, and I knew it. But luckily, it only turned to two more times. I said one more time, we all died the first time. That was the first time I said it. Then the second time, they all laughed, and we actually beat the boss. Which, so I guess that was like a half a lie, little fib. So it is fun to see that Remnant 2 picks up what Remnant from the ashes left and improves it in every way. And it's weird because even though this game outsold the first one, which was Remnant from the Ashes, I still feel like it's an underrated game. I just read on Wikipedia like 5 minutes ago that Remnant 2 was the best selling game in America for July, which is, it feels like it's kind of cherry picking, right? I feel like sports do that a lot too. Like, hey, this fighter, you know, was the 13th fighter to throw a right uh, crescent kick at 203 on the second round. Like, they're very cherry picked stats and they're very annoying. That happens I watch a lot of combat sports, and that happens a lot in combat sports. Like, this is the 33rd fighter with a knockout on the second round. I was like, dude, who gives a fuck? Like, if you're gonna have a stat, let it be short and sweet, and be like, oh shit, like this fighter has the most knockouts in UFC history. You go, oh, that's a great stat. I like to know that. But don't tell me this fighter right here is the 14th fighter to walk out to, fucking uh, Ted Nugent stranglehold. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care. So I lost my train of thought here. That is a dope song though. I was listening to it the other day and I was going ape shit. Me and my boy went to go see Tim Dillon. He was down in the PA area and it was this dude is wild, man. But it was great. It was a much better set than I expected. Like I thought it was just gonna be nameless ranting. Sorry, not nameless ranting. Very, very named ranting. But like what I meant is like I thought it was going to be a lot like his podcast. It was not. It was a straight up. It was a straight up comedy act, and it was a good one too. It was brutal, just the way I like it. It was rough. It made some people uncomfortable, I'm sure, but I loved it all the way. I really enjoyed it. Thank God I wasn't sitting in the front row. Made a conscious decision of that. Also, it was a little more expensive. Um, where was I? So was I saying yeah, so the boss designs, I think that's where I last left off. If not, sorry, man. The boss designs they're fun and I can't wait to continue playing the game to see the next bosses, because the last jeez, we fought maybe 5 6 bosses already. They were all fun, and they all start off kind of hard, then the difficulty ramps up. That's why, like, by the third boss, I remember telling the crew, like, yo, imagine the final boss in this fucking game. Like, we're gonna spend Lord knows how much time fighting it, but I'm sure it'll be as stressful as it is fun, which, like I said earlier, it is the backbone of the Dark Souls formula. It works so well. It works so well, and I can totally see why so many games emulate it, but yeah, I do feel like it's definitely on the tiring side. I would definitely like to see less games copying that formula. I'm going to be honest with you. But and speaking of which, right? Recently I upgraded my PC, right? And I went with a pre-built. I know, I know, I know. I can hear the loud fucking groans. I don't trust myself enough to actually build a PC myself. Although I do, you can do everything on YouTube, and I'll tell you this straight up. I have the know-how to build a PC from scratch. I just don't have the confidence to build a PC from scratch. So I know that I'm smart enough to do it. I know I can do it. That is no without a shadow of a doubt. It's just I don't have the confidence. My brain goes on overdrive. I'm like, I'm gonna fuck this up. I'm gonna install this incorrectly. I didn't get the proper power supply unit. I'm gonna blow this shit up, which has happened to me before, right? That doesn't help, right? When you're like, oh, things could go wrong. This could go wrong specifically, and then you start to think like, oh, this did go wrong specifically back then. When I first started gaming, I'll tell you a quick story. When I first started gaming, my brother built my PC for me, and I guess he wasn't that great at it too, apparently. And he gave me a power supply that was way underpowered for the device that I had. I can't remember. I was running a Radeon. It was an all Radeon setup, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember in the middle of gaming, that shit just blew up. Wow! It just sounded like literally like a loud gunshot, and then scared the shit out of me. It was like in the middle of the afternoon, and I looked at my PC, everything shut off, and all you smell was just, electronic smoke, like something electronic is burning. And I was like, fuck, that's my entire PC, dude. I unplug it, I check the back, and it's just not a hole, but you can tell like a blast mark on the PSU. Like I blew that shit damn near out of my system. So I look around to see if there was any immediate damage to the GPU, CPU. I didn't see anything, and I was like, fuck, whatever. I uninstalled it. I told my brother about it. He was like, "Fuck, dude, I'm sorry." I said, "It's all good, dude." He's like, "I got a Corsair lying around or whatever, Corsair PSU." So I picked it up, put it on, everything worked fine, which is weird, right? I was like, "Oh, this shit is not gonna work. I'm gonna have to replace everything on this thing." But no, it worked fine, and it went to work for a few more years before I ended up giving it away to one of my friend's cousins or something like that. So I bought a new pre-built PC, and it came with Lies of P, which is an upcoming Dark Souls-like game. Can't make this up, but it's free. They were like, you can, here's the code for it. I had to jump through hoops. I had to download an AMD product verification tool. It was too much. I was like, God damn, just give me the fucking key already, dude. So you could have gave me the key on the receipt. Like, what the fuck? Whatever. I understand. I guess they're trying to, reduce theft and, duplication and whatever, exploitation, whatever. So whatever. I had to jump through hoops to get it, but I got it. So I'm thinking like, I'm thinking about a lot of things. I'm thinking about how publications who gave games like Starfield, which I'm also playing now, and mwah, that shit is fucking awesome. Starfield is great. I I have a PC now that can run it, and it still really can't. That shows you how taxing this game is. Or to jump on the conspiracy theory side, right? I'm gonna put on my tinfoil hat for a second here, so ride with me. And then what's gonna happen is I'm gonna tell you a story, and then I'm gonna forget my placeholder. I'm gonna forget the segue, and I'm just gonna talk about something else completely. Sounds great to you? Stick around. Sometimes I feel, right? This is my conspiracy side thinking. Sometimes I feel like these games are intentionally made to be graphic intensive, so they can lean you towards buying something that their partner, who they're affiliated with, has. So, for example, in Starfield's case, there was no DLSS support for it, but there was FSR, right? So it's like, hey, let's. It's already been proven by many benchmarks that I've seen, as well as anyone else. You don't take my word for it. Go online and look for this specific fact. This part right here of the story is not conspiracy theory. This is an actual factual part. If you have an NVIDIA GPU, it's gonna run bad compared to an AMD one. That's by design. It has to be, right? Now, I know you can say that the game is just it's a 2023 game. Of course it's going to be taxing, and I get that. I have to factor that in. The fact that a new game that came out this year at this moment, it's going to be hard to run unless it's like an indie game or less graphic intensive game, but a general triple A title, it's going to be hard as fuck to run even on good hardware, right? So okay, yeah, I'll factor that in, but like, come on, all NVIDIA GPUs run way less effectively than AMD, and then AMD happens to be Bethesda's partner in this, like their official business partner. Like, like I feel like that. Yes, I can't prove that. This is why I labeled it under conspiracy. But come on, man, this is like, like how many games are doing this? And speaking of this, right? To segue, I actually remember the segue. Awesome. Moving on. Um, the segue would be we're moving back to Remnant 2 and AMD, right? Like this game has AMD support, it has DLSS, and it also has an Intel's. Is that super sampling? I don't know what the name of DLSS and FSR. I think it's super sampling software or whatever. Anyways, it has Intel's one, X some shit. And I feel like this is something that I said in my last video, if I'm not mistaken. I said that like I feel like nowadays a lot of developers aren't masterfully optimizing their games and just relying on DLSS, Intel's version, and also FSR to just do the heavy lifting, right? It's like we're gonna optimize this game, right? But we're not gonna masterfully optimize it. We're just gonna optimize it good enough, and then just throw on. Listen, tell everyone to throw on super sampling or whatever that's called, FSR, DLSS, and just let that be the mule. Let that carry the heavy burden of graphic intensity. Graphic intensity. I don't like that. I don't know how I feel about that. Like I don't know how I feel about it, but I know I mostly don't like it. There's a side of me that's just like, I don't know, whatever happened to just optimizing the shit out of your game so it can run well on even like older software, right? Like you want the most amount of people to play this, right? From a business standpoint. So like if someone hasn't upgraded, someone's still rocking a 3, 4, 5 year old chipset, right? They're not going to run Starfield. And if they do, they're going to run Starfield at a very shitty settings, right? Of course, that's not all across the board. I'm sure there's like a 4 year old GPU out there that can definitely run Starfield good or at least somewhat comfortably. But for the most part, a 5-year-old GPU ain't gonna do it, right? You would think that you would masterfully optimize your game in order for everyone, even people with old GPUs and CPUs, to run their shit effectively. But it just seems to me like, listen, if I was a conspiracy theorist, it's like, hey, let's make this game as graphic as intensive as possible. Kind of nudge people into buying AMD shit. Because right now Starfield is the only game, well, not the only game, but right now Starfield only supports FSR. There has been DLSS support for it announced recently. I read about this yesterday, as a matter of fact. So there will be DLSS, which is great. That's in the future. I don't know when that's coming, but it will come. But it's just like, hey, let's nudge them to buy some AMD shit. It's like, hey, you know what would run great? Well, you know what Starfield? You want to play Starfield? You know how it would run great? Get a AMD chipset. It's time to upgrade anyway, right? And then they'll release DLSS, and it's just like, by that time, people have already bought AMD shit, which leads me to my um uh new pre-built, right? I bought like a power spec one, right? And I did thorough research. I did benchmarks. I also did see. I also saw what kind of parts are in here, and everything checks out, dude. I'm serious. Like everything checks out, from the SSD to the chipset to the CPU to the PSU to the RAM to the Wi-Fi components. Everything checks out. There's nothing here, to my knowledge, that is like completely generic and doesn't have some sort of a trace to it, right? Like it may not be as popular as like the RAM that I'm sporting right now. Jesus, I can't remember, but it's from South Korea and it's pretty good from what I hear, right? So it's like there's a trace for it. Like you can find this. It's not like some cheap knockoff shit you would find overseas. That, like, what the fuck is this? Where did you guys get this from? Where did you guys build this from? So I don't know, man. Maybe there's some sort of conspiracy going on. Maybe there isn't. Maybe it's all in my head. Maybe I'm making it a big deal. But it just seems to me like I hope that this isn't a trend, because I see it happening with Remnant 2, and I've seen it happening with Starfield. That it's kind of like we're gonna let just FSR and also DLSS and as well as Intel's version just carry the heavy weight, and we're not really just gonna optimize our games, or we're gonna half bake optimize our games and then kind of just optimize it really good as time goes on. I don't know, man. I hope that's not the case. Maybe it's all in my head. Maybe I'm overthinking it. I do tend to do that. Maybe this is just the way things are for now until more optimizations do come for Starfield and Remnant, because they're both two fairly. They both came out this year within months apart from each other. So maybe it needs more time to bake an oven for them to come up with great optimizations so it can run better. I don't know. We'll see about that. But like I was saying earlier, I want to go back to this point that I was talking about, how Remnant 2 outsold Remnant 1. Like in its first week, it sold 1 million copies, which is already outpaced Remnant 1. And it's weird because, like I said earlier, I still feel like it's a sleeper. Like everyone was talking about it for a brief period in time, right? Like for just a little bit, people were like, "Yo, Remnant's pretty good," and that was the general consensus. I haven't heard one person say it was shit. Not one person, which is great. That's that's a rare thing nowadays, with it being so easy to bitch about anything and to complain about anything. You can literally press a button and bitch in anonymity, if that's a word, right? You can complain and be a Karen online without even revealing your identity, right? So how is that not tempting to people? Not to me. I still think it's shitty because I know I did it. I may be anonymous to you, but I know I did it, so I feel bad about it. If that makes any sense, right? That maybe I'm old school. I don't know, but that's the way I think. I think that I don't care if it's online, and I don't care online in real life saying shitty things. Not good, man. It ain't good. I'm not gonna say anything on, even if I know I can get away with it, right? I'm not gonna say something shitty to someone online, because that's just I connect that with me, my character. My character doesn't allow that because I'm holier than you. No, I get it. Sometimes you just want to snap someone's neck online because they're saying some real retarded shit. That happens a lot, especially with politics. We're not going to get into that one, right? Or do you want to? I do like the fact that Remnant is so successful that I know there's going to be a three. I feel it. I know there's going to be a three, and I'm there for it, man. I hope this is a franchise that keeps going. It's a franchise that I can't. You need to play this with friends. Like I hope you can find friends to play this with because it's amazing to play with friends. I have played this game solo, and I fought a boss, or at least a mini boss, and it's so much easier when you're playing by yourself. Uh, Enemies take less damage, which is it makes sense, right? Because you're by yourself. You don't want a tank, sorry, a sponge, a bullet sponge of a boss or mini boss when you're by yourself. It's just that's what it's like when you're playing with three people. Like the bosses take fucking long time, but I understand because there's three of us. So, but I feel like I can blow through this game. I'm gonna be honest. If I was by myself, and I got it on, I think veteran difficulty, which I think is like the third to last, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not on easy. It's not. I don't even think it's on normal. I think I got it on hard, as a matter of fact. And these poor friends that I'm playing with, they're going through it too, which I'm sure they're not crazy about the difficulty, but whatever. I mean, I'm enjoying it. They're enjoying it. That's all that matters. Um, as far as the game goes, if you've played part one, you've I was gonna say you've played part two. That's a I keep generalizing games like that. I'm sorry, but I mean, kind of true. But part two just makes it better. Like it's hard to go back and play part one after playing part two. That's what I'm trying to say. They do continue, they do refer as your character as the wanderer in part two. So your character was the wanderer in part one, and they do refer to you in part two as the wanderer, but now you're a traveler. So that's your name now, the traveler, as in for part two. In part one, you were the wanderer. So it's cool that the game continues, and you know what? And just like Dark Souls. It's very cryptic lore in this game, and you can find it in books. You can find it in items. I love the way they describe their items because they're very like almost like if a person wrote, like it's not formal the way they describe items. It's like just like a cool guy just describing shit. Like if a former person is describing a keyboard, they'll be like the aesthetics of this keyboard are mesmerizing to an extent. Like a regular dude would be like, yo, this keyboard looks fucking cool. And that's how they write in that like vein. And I like that. I like when they describe items like that. And it's not always like that. Sometimes then they describe items, they do get kind of granular, and that's cool too. But anyways, what I'm saying is the lore is there. It's a lot actually. It's a lot to take in, and you wouldn't think so considering this is like a shooter at heart. It's not really it is an RPG, but it's not like an RPG in the sense of like Skyrim or like when there's so much things going on, like decisions affect the entire world and it's completely open. This game is not open world per se. It's kind of linear. It's more like instances, if I'm not mistaken. You go into dungeons and you fight those dungeons, and those dungeons they switch up. The enemy position switch up. I don't know if it's procedurally generated. I know part one was, but I don't know if part two is because I think the settings stay the same. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think the settings stay the same. But I think enemy placement is different. Whatever. It keeps things interesting. I I'm a big fan, and if you're looking for Dark Souls with a twist, this one has guns. You're not gonna disappoint. It's fun. It's I feel like even though it's sold, and even though people know what Remnant is, at least now people know what Remnant is now more than ever, more than part one, because I would bring up part one to anyone else, and literally like 9 out of 10 people said they've never heard of it. You know, so I smell food, man. I made breakfast this morning. I hope I shut off my flame. I've known to do that. I'm over here hanging out, taking a shower. I come back and there's still fire under the pot. Cause, anyways, so it's a great game. I do hope that you do get a chance to play it. I know it's gonna be on sale soon. I got a feeling. So if you catch it on sale, man, even if it's like, I think the MSRP on it was $50 when it first came out. Might have been even 40. I think it was like 50, which is great by its own. But if you can get it cheaper than that, like $40, $30, man, don't even hesitate. Get a friend and just play it. Like it's fun. It's 100% fun. And you also can just change the difficulty up too. It doesn't have to be veteran. I'm sure the game would be much easier if you play it at, easy. That's why it's called easy, right? Um, yeah. So quick note before I get out of here. I'm looking at my pre-built now. I know. I hear the groans. I like this thing, man. It's got a whole AMD thing. I don't want to get into specifics because I don't want nobody to rip me apart. But let's just say it's a card that has 8 gigs of RAM. I play on 1080p VRAM. You know, I play on 1080p. It's a good processor too, 6 core, but fucking great 6 core from what I read. It's totally comfortable with what I play 1080p high. I never really play ultra. It's rare, and unless I'm playing old games, I play 1080p 60 frames per second VSync on high. And that you can, that's what some people say is entry level. Some people say it's mid tier. You pick your poison there. I'm not even gonna go back and forth with that. But I got a feeling this is something I'm gonna keep for quite a while. I'm gonna rock with this one for a while. I love it. It's quiet. My laptop is collecting dust, and it makes me sad because that thing was old, reliable. Now it's inside of a bag, and I'm just looking at it, and I'm like, I probably have to sell it because I'm not the type of guy. Like people are like, keep it, keep it. You can use it as a backup, and I'm like, not that guy. Like I don't, I know I'm not gonna use it, and I don't like having something sitting around my apartment for days, years, months if I know I'm not gonna use it. I'm like very, what's the word? Like a minimalist when it comes to things like that. I'm very strict about shit like that. But it's great, man. I don't know, man. Pre-builds are getting better. I swear. Maybe. As a matter of fact, there ain't no maybe. I told myself this, right? Since I bought a pre-built, and I told my brother, he's like, dude. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? You could have saved money if you could. And I was like, dude, I priced every single individual part on Newegg, and it actually would cost more to build the same pre-built that I just bought. I'll probably save a few dollars, but not by much. Under $100, I would save. And I'm like, that's not really that big of a save when I can just go to the micro center and pick up this pre-built. Whatever. I did my research on this thing. I really like it. It's great. Um, I'm gonna get out of here. Going on a trip tomorrow if everything goes well outside of the U.S. for the first time. It won't be for too long, so I'm gonna try to drop one of these videos at least one more. I'm trying to aim for two for before the end of the month, but I know I'm gonna do at least one more after this for sure. Be safe. Talk to you guys later.